You are now entering what can only be described as a true free speech zone, where nothing is off limits and there is absolutely no censorship. Welcome to Open Mic with Boog Brand.
Hello, how is it going? We are live tonight. Open mic with Boog Brand, special guest, HicapClipazine on Instagram, Lord of the Memes, the Savage Gentleman. How are you tonight? What's going on?
Well, all I can say is war never changes, but Vault-Tec is your friend.
There you go. And that pretty much sums up your page for those who aren't familiar with you. Always looking for a good time. Always looking to have some fun. As you say it, very active in the story section.
Yes, I am way more active in stories than I am in the actual posts. So that's where I do all of my fun. So name's HiCap. I started the original version of the Instagram page. Just a little bit about the backstory of the page. I started it probably about 3 or 4 years ago now. And it was right in the middle of when all of those ghost gun hearings were happening. You know, you had that classic California senator holding an AR-15 saying that this is a ghost gun, and people are talking about all of them, all of the massive incorrect terminology in regards to firearms parts and accessories and what they do. And I was getting annoyed. I'm going, you know what? I need to start my own IG page so that I can post stuff that I think is cool, but also makes fun of these people and just kind of what's going on. What can I do for an Instagram name that makes sense? And I thought, wait a minute, HiCap, which is cool, like you're at high capacity, and then Clipazine, because they were always that was the word going around at the time, was all these Clipazines and whatnot. So I'm thinking, okay, let's go with that, and ran that page for about a year until I got and then I got zucked somehow for some reason. I don't know what happened. Yeah.
Just imagine getting zucked.
Yeah,
that was before the cancel culture hit everybody.
Yeah, it was actually a bit ahead of the whole cancel. Like, this was like kind of like early on when pages just started trying to started disappearing. I'm like, well, that's strange. And I was about where I was around 1,500 followers ish, and I'm like, oh well, we'll start over again. And most of them came back pretty quick, and just kept going forward with it. And currently, in the last few years, my life hasn't been that interesting in the fact of like actually posting, in the main page, but I try to post things in the story section that I think are relevant into the current times and funny, a little bit edgy, and rock the boat a little bit. So that's kind of what I do with my page.
Yeah, I enjoy what you post up most of the time. I'm constantly just scrolling through people's story sections. I don't get to play on there much, but the stories are nice because you can just click on one and just let them play through, and you can avoid the ads even better.
Oh yes. I mean, when the death of IG was when you started seeing all the sponsored ads that you couldn't get away from.
I didn't even think it was. I don't even think it's that. I think it's just like this hyper integration of Facebook and Instagram, and you can't have one without the other type deal. It's I actually had this discussion with somebody today about the evolution of Facebook, where it used to really be all they wanted to do was have social interaction on there. And then you started gradually seeing businesses, and you started gradually seeing it became a search engine.
Yeah, it did.
It became its own ecosystem as far as that's concerned, and very much an echo chamber, as we all know now. So you can't say anything, outside of what George Orwell says you're allowed to. So.
Oh no, especially now.
I mean, Mark Zuckerberg. Sorry, I get the two mixed up sometime.
Are they different? I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah.
uh, yeah, I remember the glory days of Facebook. I remember when it started, and it was a cool thing. It was just something where you could interact with your friends, and of course, people posted the most ridiculous stuff, like they got a burger down at the 7-Eleven or a Slurpee or something, and
Yeah,
then
I don't need to. I
raise
think
the
it'd be.
roof, and I'm just like, no, no, I don't know. And then there was the avalanche of cat pictures and everything else,
Yeah.
but it's just, I mean, at its core, it was fine.
Yeah,
The instant
Facebook when it first
messenger was
started was fun.
Yeah, the instant messenger was fun and still kind of is. It's a good way to keep in contact with a lot of different people that you may know, especially if they're overseas. Making phone calls overseas is still difficult for some reason. I don't know why. And but yeah, it's gotten to the point now, like you said, where it's its own self-contained and monitored ecosystem, and it's just not fun anymore. It's
Yeah.
it's 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 a landmine trap.
Well, and
And
it's interesting. I find it's either not fun or it's completely subjugated your brain matter and you're just addicted to it.
yeah, yeah, and I use my own personal Facebook for my own reasons now, and that's more like an observation post than anything else, just to kind of see what's going on. And I don't really use it that much for really anything other than observation. I do post a few things here and there, but nothing like what on Instagram. And heck, I remember this was pre or shortly after the election. It's like you could go into Facebook, find any number of really cool groups, and people were buying and selling legit stuff on there. Like people were buying and selling AKs, ARs, field equipment, all kinds of cool stuff, ammo. That all got shut down. Like you can't even post a picture of that stuff anymore without you catching a 7-day or 30-day ban.
Right.
And
Yeah, it's ridiculous. I actually know a guy who got banned off of Facebook for I think he got a 21-day suspension for trying to sell a paintball gun.
yeah, yeah, it's not healthy anymore. It's like you said, an echo chamber. It's barely better than Twitter, and it's not the future of social media because I personally believe the world was a better place pre-internet. I really do. Uh,
I don't even necessarily say it was 100% pre-internet. I think pre-social media is the best way to put it
yeah,
because I think if you want to be real, social media started way back in the chat rooms, right? You know,
it still does. There's the chat room still exists, the forums still exist, but
yeah,
it.
and that was an all-encompassing thing, and it kind of started there for the most part, and yeah, people's lives started getting ruined by that stuff. Just being so enthralled with this virtual life that they just gave up on their real one.
Mhm.
I mean, you could be
It,
anybody, you could do anything. So, as long as nobody caught you in your lies, you could do whatever you wanted. You could be whatever you wanted. And I think that's part of the reason today we have so many online Navy SEALs.
mhm. Yeah. Gosh, or the one before that was the Vietnam sniper. It's
Right.
like, yeah. Uh, you bring up a really good point. I remember this quote years ago. I heard it. It was like people used to go online to escape real life for a little bit, and now people have to engage in real life to escape being online.
Right.
The and it's very pervasive, and it's not very wholesome, not very uplifting, and it just saps so much of your brain energy.
Right.
But the unfortunate reality is that social media is not going anywhere. It's going to exist in one form or another, and it's just a matter of how do we properly navigate it and use it appropriately for because in and of itself it's just a tool. It's a tool for communication, it's a tool for putting out information, it's a tool for having fun, but it's just how you use it and how much time you spend on it is where the real quality of it comes from, and also how well it's being managed and for what purposes it's being managed at the higher levels.
Right. So, I don't know. Social media, I think Joseph Detmer said, what more people need to do is like that. It's a lot like me. Joseph Detmer says, I don't use Facebook for anything other than keeping up with family. Unfortunately, in a lot of cases, it's the only way to keep up with them. Like, I don't know if I've said it on stream before, but I literally have an uncle who I found out died a week and a half after the fact on Facebook. And not because somebody reached out to me. It was because somebody posted pictures of his funeral. Like, I would have loved
That,
to have gone.
yeah, it's well. This points out to a classic thing of the human condition, which humans are social creatures. We are a pack animal. Now, granted, certain individuals within the human race can handle certain levels of interaction or require certain levels of interaction more or less than others, but we require it. We need you. There's no human who can really survive very long without going insane, without some form of human interaction or social
Right.
interaction.
Right.
And and in lieu of personal contact, social media, with the progression of the internet, with the progression of social media, human beings, being creatures of habit and also of convenience, will choose the easiest path overwhelmingly, and have overwhelmingly replaced real human interaction with social media because it's easier. It's another layer of defense against a possible threat, and it's just become the norm now. It wasn't that long ago, 30 years ago, 25 years ago, you, you had people who would still hold block parties or hold community get-togethers for your neighborhood, so you knew who your neighbors were and stuff that
Yeah.
was going on. And you actually had to remember people's birthdays and call them and see what was up, and keep in contact with your neighbors and your close friends. And there was actually, like, people say social network today in the social media sense. Well, that could be people all over the country, all over the world. Well, that's great, but who are your homies within 15-minute drive?
Mm-hmm. And that's actually a great point because that gets into something I got into last week. I actually gave, for those of you who were here last week, which it looks like, I mean, we got Operator Tony, we got American White Guy, we got Joseph Detmer. If Joseph's here, I'm sure, Chamber Defense isn't far behind. I gave y'all homework last week to go out and actually introduce yourself to a neighbor because so many people, and I said it last week, just don't even know the people who live even within a stone's throw of their house. And like, if
No,
you have a
and
security plan and you don't know your fucking neighbor, you don't have a security plan.
nope, nope.
So I'm hoping everybody went out and did their little homework. I know I did. Um, introduce myself to a couple neighbors, out walking around, just talking.
Mm-hmm.
I'm hoping everybody else did because that's what we have to do, and every week we have to do that to somebody new.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how we have to rebuild this structure, rebuild this society and this community.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, nobody
Yeah.
trusts anybody because nobody knows anybody except for those that are in their own little circle online.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the thing,
And
online. How many people even know your coworkers? You may know their names, you may know if they have kids or if they're married, but do you really know them? I mean, for the most part, a lot of us spend 60% of our lives with these people and we don't even know who they are.
depending on who they are and what you gather on the job site, there's a valid question of, do you really want to know them any further?
Well,
Are
the
are
thing
are,
is,
are
though,
they
is
trustworthy?
that the thing though is if do you know them? If
Mm-hmm.
you know that they're not trustworthy and you know that they're the type of person who may try to take advantage of you, who may compromise your security, then at least you know that person.
Mm-hmm.
So whether you want to know them or not, you do. And
Mm-hmm.
you know whether or not they're an issue or not. So
Yep.
getting to know them doesn't mean being friends with them. It means, getting out there, assessing the threat level that exists around you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if everybody knew every one of their coworkers, let's be honest, there probably wouldn't be nearly as many casualties if somebody's fired. Because everybody's gonna know the guy who's got that short trigger, who's got that fuse or that mentality, who he could come back, and
Mm-hmm.
and you're gonna take precautions if that happens.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't take the guy who once said, I could shoot like four motherfuckers through that window off that water tower if I really wanted to, and just wipe him off the map. Well, we're just gonna sweep him under the rug. No, you pay attention to that fucking guy
Mm-hmm.
because he's thought about it.
Mm-hmm.
So
And, going back to the whole thing you mentioned about rebuilding society, I mean, we're at a point now where through the overindulgent materialism, too much time spent online, and no community building and community understanding, is that we are now, all of us for the most part, individual little atomized cells and households, which then, so we're basically starting with not even really a society anymore. We're just a bunch of individuals that we have to build a society around. And that is a very bad position to be in, because it allows tyranny to be so easily implemented, which some would argue we're seeing right now.
Right.
It's like, how are they implementing all of these unconstitutional or unlawful orders and mandates and getting away with it? Well, there's in a lot of places there's no organized method of resistance, because it's just individuals resisting, and individuals resisting do not have the resources and strength and manpower to effectively resist without getting crushed.
Exactly.
And no one wants to be the next ant who gets stepped on. However, you don't want to put your foot, if you're stepping on ants, you don't want to put your foot in the whole hive.
Exactly. And that's another thing. I mean, you're hitting on a lot of things we've talked about here before,
Mhm.
and it's not a bad thing, because it's the truth. Like,
No,
when we
no.
talk about this, it's not meant to be just kind of like a washed under the rug thing. Like, we're in a shitty situation,
Mhm.
especially in the 2A community, because I don't know if it was 2 weeks ago I said it. Each one of us, if anybody gets caught up and is fighting a law that's unconstitutional, we all know it's unconstitutional. Well, if we're all just sitting back playing, armchair quarterback on our computers,
Mhm.
and not out in the communities actually trying to fight the regulation that's in place,
Mhm.
that person who's fighting it in court is never going to get anywhere. Because at court, he's just one guy who means nothing.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
if you got 60 people in that courtroom arguing that law is unconstitutional, now that judge is going to have to pay attention.
Yeah, because now they're fighting an actual group, they're fighting an association, they're fighting a community, they're
Exactly.
fighting a ton of voices, or one voice that has a lot of pull behind it, a lot of support behind it, and a lot of resources. And unfortunately, when it comes to, if the laws were actually followed the way they're written and supposed to be followed per original guidelines, we wouldn't need courts and lawyers and everything. It's all about who tells the best story and is the most eloquent and can do the most I gotchas. And it's
Right. Well,
and
but
you need.
the courts are nice, because you don't want to end up with that whole kangaroo court situation either. So the
But
whole
are
point
we
is
not there
having
already? Are we
we
not in a
pretty much
kangaroo court
are.
situation already?
We pretty much are, because it's come down to the point where we have no option to do anything else. But
Yeah, it's.
as somebody like, and I don't know how much you know of my background. Probably pretty minimal, same as me to you. But
Mm.
I spent more than 14 years of my life as a felon in the court system fighting to get my rights back. I succeeded. It took a long time, but
And a lot of money, I bet, too.
and it did take a lot of money. There's certain individuals. I can say it has taken less money for me to do it than some individuals. But I went out and did the legwork. I read the statutes. I read everything, and I actually literally just brought a case to an attorney and said, "Hey,
Mm-hmm.
I'm literally only using you for your connection with the district attorney at this point. That's it." And I
Mm-hmm.
was upfront about it, and we were pretty good price. I mean, he basically took a $1,500 retainer in an attempt to basically circumvent the law, but not really. It's just using precedent that has been set before. So
Yeah, well, if it's precedent, it's precedent, and it sets the. It's like, well, you guys did
exactly,
it. Why can't we?
exactly.
Uh, and I want to point out Mario's thing here, and politics is a very interesting thing to talk about today, because you have to be careful, because you never know who's listening and who wants to dox who. But Mario brings up a good point here. He says, when we have a Republican president, we lay back. When we have a Democratic president, we should be the other way around. Well, personally, both parties suck immensely. because one side overtly actively hates the country or has become such and is trying to completely transform it into something awful, and the other side is just a bunch of corporate shills who care about their corporate connections, and when they do have power they don't do anything. They just sit on their hands, and they don't try to reverse any damage that's been done, roll stuff back. It's just okay. It's when you have one side in, it's a pause. It's just a pause on the train, and then when the other side gets in, it's the train gets fired up and starts going to make up for lost time, and they're not shy about it either. And that side is also incredibly violent, both politically and physically, and has no qualms about trying to ruin people's lives who stand in opposition to it, even if it's loyal opposition. It's like, don't quite agree with what you're doing here. We should maybe adjust something. Nope. That person's canceled, thrown to the wolves, yada, yada. Thrown to the gulag in all but name.
Right. And I don't disagree. And I take that another step too and say, Tony, or to Mario, that saying it should be the other way around is incorrect too. Like, the problem is we should never rest on our laurels, regardless of who's in office. Like, too many individuals have come in. I mean, even Trump. Like, look, between the people that were presented, Trump was the best option for me. And unfortunately, the way the system is set up right now, it is a two-party system, and voting for anybody else is simply just taking away from the fact and putting votes potentially that could have won this election into somebody else's pocket.
Well, they are. Well, it doesn't seem to matter who. Well, we're having a whole bunch of court hearings right now where it doesn't seem to matter who you vote for. Well, no, it matters if you vote one way, but if you vote another way, they seem to magically transform into the other guy's votes.
Well, and to not even go into that completely, like, my big issue with it isn't even like, a lot of these people are screaming, oh, it's Democratic, cheating, or it's Republican cheating, or whatever. And, I mean, I've seen the video that came out. I've seen this other stuff, and I've listened to it. Like, I got nothing else going on while I'm sitting behind my desk at work most of the time, so I'm literally listening to this all day long, and boring as fuck, but I'm an engineer, so I'm used to that. But my biggest thing is regardless of that, I think the biggest person to blame is the media. I think all these people, I don't see with everything that's presented as this being some massive. There's some things that, like the Dominion system, that issue, if all of that comes out and seeing the point percentage, obviously there's something fishy about it. One is one, regardless. How is there a point in this? There's no reason to have a decimal place here. But if take that away, I don't think there's anything that's legitimately organized nationally. I think a lot of these people who are doing this garbage and this cheating, I think they were literally coerced by a media that's saying Trump is literally Hitler and the worst thing in the world, and if we don't get him out of office, the world is going to fucking blow up or some shit. Well, and all these people are so feeble-minded now by the controlled information that has been pushed down their throats for so long that they just go out and they think they're doing right. And this little cell of people got together and said, look, this is what we're going to do. And then they do it. And then because they are not smart enough to carry out something like this, they get caught on fucking camera doing it. Like, if this was legitimately an op, they're not going to be caught on camera. Not saying that the government people are smart enough to pull it off either, but
Joe Biden's been caught on camera a lot.
There's a lot of people have been caught on camera.
Trump got impeached for supposedly doing what Joe Biden on camera confessed to doing.
It was the perfect phone call. Perfect phone call. It was absolutely perfect.
Yes, it was the best phone call ever. I mean, it was great. I mean, we talked to the guy. He had a good time. He agreed with me. He said, "Yeah, we should look into it." And then things happened. But on the so this is an interesting point you bring up as far as the media, and I tend to agree, but we have to look at it from a pillar system. The media, or what I'm going to call the mainstream or the traditional media or the institution of media, is a pillar of culture, as is education, as is finance, as is all these other things, the arts, uh, Hollywood. Every single institution of culture within the United States and the West, and Western culture, is seemingly dominated by one particular point of view. And to me, that's very interesting. That can't be a coincidence, especially when people throw out the whole silent majority thing all the time. And I'm at a point now in my life where I don't believe in the silent majority. I think it's BS, because if it is a majority, that would filter into every other aspect of life, and I don't see it. I've seen no evidence of the silent majority, especially when I see quote unquote official poll numbers and voting numbers. It's
Yeah,
very much a 50-50, if not 60-40 at this point. Um,
I think one of
and
the
and
things
the
like
media and the
yep,
media, like what you mentioned before, they come from the old institutions of journalism, which I believe in the West is dead. They're not journalists anymore. They are propaganda arms. Old school journalism, which exists in very few places anymore, presents you the facts of what has transpired and what has happened, and gives you a little bit of context so you can kind of understand the bigger picture, and then leaves it up to the reader or viewer to make up their mind of how they feel about it. Anything you watch or read today, for the most part, tells you what to feel about what has happened, and presents their bias towards it, instead of leaving themselves out of it as far as just being a journalist. So
right,
mainstream media, in my opinion, is a propaganda wing, nothing more. Uh, it's very, like you mentioned, Animal Farm, Orwellian, everything else. It's what the media today, especially with social media, is the ministry of truth,
uh-huh,
and we're already seeing it. And and they actively engage in censorship. We're already seeing the fact with fact checkers and not being able to share links on certain stories or post certain pictures. They're immediately flagged, taken down. Um, it's funny. No, there were no fact checkers until people started calling the bullshit.
yeah, exactly.
pardon, pardon my French.
You can say
But
whatever
hey,
you want on our channel,
yeah,
but it's the
yeah.
truth.
But taking even a further view back, I mean, I'm a bit of an amateur historian. I've always been a history nut since I was a kid. What we're seeing now is nothing new from the standpoint of a cycle of history. Uh, our current, if we want to use America in particular, but it can be applied to the rest of Western culture because everybody seems to be in a similar boat. We're very much in a Weimar Republic stage. We've we've lived high and mighty. We've emptied our pockets way too much. We've indulged ourselves in decadent pleasures and amusements for way too long, and we're in a state of massive societal decay. And there's a wake up happening to this. Now, unfortunately, from the standpoint of history, there's one of three possible outcomes to this. And this has been repeated so many times in history that I'm not even going to provide examples
Right,
because
the 200-year cycle of
it
every
yeah,
empire.
yeah, you will either see a restoration of the West or the American Republic. We'll see a complete political domination by an extreme viewpoint of one side or the other, um, or we'll see a balkanization occur, like what happened in the former Yugoslavia in the 90s, where the society became so fractured among so many different lines that it just broke apart at the seams. And then when that happened, each little group kicked everybody out who they didn't like until everything stabilized.
Yeah,
Uh, the sad part from the standpoint of history is that the first one I mentioned, which we're going to call the good one, the restoration of the West of the American Republic, is statistically speaking the least likely outcome.
yeah, and to that point too, it's almost as though, I mean, if you really look at it and you take those three outcomes, and you take that one to the side, because let's be honest, the majority of the people who are controlling the minds or trying to control the minds with the energy and everything, the majority of those people, they don't want that. They don't like the American Republic the way it was or the way it is. So they want something different.
Or the
So
West
they're
in general.
actually literally pushing both of the other two options at the same exact time. So they're
Yeah.
trying to create racial division. When racial division doesn't work, then they're creating financial division, and financial division leads more into racial division because as that starts to work, then they start pushing the racial stuff again. So we're extremely fractured on ideology,
Mm-hmm.
finance, race, whatever. I
Mm-hmm.
personally I look around at my local community and I say we're closer than ever when it comes to race, but online and in general at large, it's not that way.
Mm-hmm.
And
Well, we're in a battle of cultures, first and foremost.
right,
And I've had this discussion with people I know and friends, and they bring up the race stuff, and that's a huge topic. But ultimately, what it comes down to is culture. If people think very similar to you, hold similar values, uh, cherish very similar things, and want to live in a similar way to you, and aren't personally threatening your own life and existence, human beings tend to throw out the other things.
right,
But and it's just like physics. Two things that are cannot exist in the same place at the same time. It doesn't matter if it's particle physics. It doesn't matter if it's these two sharpies. They can't exist in the same space at the same time, and it also can't exist in regards to cultures.
right,
Uh, we've seen this more times in history than not. When a new culture moves into a new area or a new population group, one of two things can happen: one side dominates the other, or they blend and become an entirely new thing. So, so there's that. But even taking a further look from all of this is, I'll be straight to say that, human beings are creatures of worship. We are
right,
created, and I will gladly state this. I do come from the Christian faith. Human beings are created to worship, and human beings have always worshiped. We always have. It's just a matter of what we've worshiped,
right,
whether it's our Creator and Father in heaven and Christ the King, who is King and is coming back, or we worship our possessions, we worship our sports teams, we worship idols that we've made of our own hands, or we worship our political leaders. And people say we don't work. People talk about the pharaohs of like, oh, they were so stupid worshiping the pharaoh. Are we not doing the exact same thing today, like worshiping the president or the presidential candidate or your favorite senator or congressman? We're doing the same exact thing today. We've re-entered in modern society the era of God King worship, and we're at that point because someone or some people got the bright idea at the end of the 50s, beginning of 60s, of full scale replacing God. And I say that specifically in the Christian sense, from every aspect of Western culture, and now we bear the fruits of it.
yeah. I don't disagree. And I'll say this, and I'm saying that as a person who's not fully and wholly religious in the sense of
Mm-hmm.
Christianity, Catholicism. I was born into a Catholic family.
Mm-hmm.
My mother and father were not very religious. They chose not to baptize me, but instead of baptizing me, they introduced me to multiple religions. So I was able to choose my own path, and at the end of the day, I'll say that I am a practicing Catholic who doesn't go to church very often. I don't believe that the church is necessarily the answer. Um,
Well, yeah,
and,
I
and,
mean,
and most
people talk.
religions,
Sorry. Go ahead.
no,
Go ahead.
it's sorry. And the way I see it is most religions are essentially the same. They all have the same value systems. They all have the same teachings. It's just how they're interpreted, and the church has changed its interpretation so many times that I think religion is really meant to the individual person and how they interpret it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where God has said, in fact, that whatever He holds true on earth, He too shall hold true in the heavens. And what I believe that means is not what the church believes, but it's as long as you lead a true and pure life and you have values that you have followed and you've dedicated yourself to being a better person and using those values, that you are okay regardless of whatever else. It's what you hold true on earth, he will hold true in the heavens, so long as you held true to what you thought was true. And I know that's deep, but that's kind of the way I've interpreted religion over the years.
And that's a very deep discussion in and of itself. It's like, what is the correct interpretation? Is
Right.
there one? I mean, I will say that I do believe wholeheartedly. I mean, yes, I was born into it, but the last few years have been a period of very deep introspection and recommitment and really trying to understand. And I do believe Christianity to be true. And then that gets into the whole discussion of, well, which iteration of it, Catholicism, Orthodoxy, Protestant, Lutheranism. It's like, oh gosh, that's a whole spider web in and of itself.
Mm-hmm.
But keeping with the topic of what we discussed, Western culture, whether you agree with it or not, had Christianity and Christendom at its center. It did. And the teachings of both the Old and the New Testament were integral with the value system, the value systems and thus governments of what would spring up. There was a very good interview, I believe, way back, probably 20, 30 years ago, when a Harvard professor had a Chinese government official coming over, and they were talking because the guy was just viewing American culture. And the Harvard professor asked him what he found most surprising about American culture. And he said, without missing a beat, this Chinese individual said the importance that religion and faith has for the average citizen. And he further espoused that at least at that time, Americans were very deep in faith and religion, even on a casual level, and thus they would, because they believed in the higher power, they believed in a higher accountability, that they would do the right thing far more often and of their own accord than if they were obeying purely an earthly government.
Right.
And we're at a time in today where, and I do blame the church on this, that we haven't really stood up for and sought to understand really what our core beliefs are and what they mean, and how we maintain our communities and do not allow a degeneration of what we believe in to occur. And I understand completely why most people don't even like Christianity anymore, because a lot of Christians are stuck up bungholes who are high on themselves. And a lot of Christians also, but when it comes to the real things, put up an incredibly pathetic, weak image where they don't even stand up for themselves or their beliefs or their families. And we're seeing today a rise in the popularity of things like Islam and other pagan religions, because they, at least in the popular stream, they throw forth an entirely separate image, not being some weak, timid thing, but some strong, masculine thing.
Right. Yeah, I think the Catholic Church, the Christian Church has come a long way from the ages, of the Crusaders and stuff like that, but not necessarily in a good way. So they've given up so much power to go along.
Yeah,
and try to do that, and I think there's kind of a return to the everything being as it should be, essentially, within the church, from what I've seen over the last couple of years. However, I think in a lot of cases it almost seems as
I'll be right back.
last-ditch effort.
One second.
No, not a problem. Just to continue it kind of, to me, seems like a last-ditch effort to hold people within the church, to keep them going, coming to church, because they're losing a lot of viewers, at the way it is. So I'll take a little break from the deep introspection that we're having here, this little conversation, and kind of address the monkey in the room. Yes, unfortunately, I don't have my beard anymore. So that happened last Saturday. Another one claimed by the coronavirus, um, unfortunately. So, having to constantly wear a mask, it literally dried me out to the point where it was unbearable. I had to try trimming it up, and at the end of the day, it completely disappeared. So that's why the beard is gone. So,
All right, I'm back.
no, not a problem. It was kind of good because we broke a little bit and lightened the mood.
well,
I think
then
Mario
it's a
here
good.
had basically the spinning wheel of death, that just literally
Yeah, the
kind of summed
spinning
it
wheel
up for
of
some
death is
people.
is really hurting Mario there.
Yes, Mario says, sorry, dude, I have to wear mine for 8 hours. So what I did, I addressed the monkey in the room. For you, it's probably not that big of a deal because you don't know me very well, but I literally shaved off about 8 inches of hair on Saturday
Oh, jeez.
from my beard. So
Hmm.
the mask wearing, the constant mask wearing, killed it.
Hmm.
Tried to skin out underneath so bad that I had to trim it back. Was getting rid of the flyers, and as soon as I trimmed them up, it just went poof.
Yeah.
So
Luckily, in
went
my
and start over.
profession, being that it is a lot of times outdoors and also you're working by yourself, though there are quote unquote rules to wear them. Most of us don't, uh, just due to the nature of the work, and we can get away with it because the people who are our supervisors and whatnot understand and are sympathetic, and they don't really believe in the BS anyway. Uh,
Yeah, unfortunately for us in Wisconsin, our governor decided to do a full mask mandate indoors, and the bureaucrats in the company I work for chose to go lockstep. My owner, on the other hand, couldn't care less. Who's
well,
my direct boss, but I have to follow suit, otherwise we have the mask Nazis crawling all over us.
15 days to flatten the curve,
Yeah, here we are. We're
and
gonna extend it
and
till January 15th.
yeah, and then 100 days of Biden's presidency.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that ain't
and
gonna go
and
so well.
this highlight. So before we kind of go to a lighter mood, I want to take this moment to point out, like, people remember when we were kids or whatnot, we would read about, quote unquote, the Nazis or the Soviet Stalinists, and how people could just rat on their neighbors so willingly and eagerly. Well, we're seeing it now.
Yeah,
People will rat on coworkers for not wearing a mask, for families down the street holding a party, and then the Gestapo shows up to fine you, or even arrest you in some countries.
right.
And some countries are taking to the point where even if you post on social media a dissenting view or even a questioning view, they show up to fine you or arrest you.
Yeah. And
So
I've seen some of that, Australia or New Zealand. New Zealand, I think it was, with the pregnant lady who literally posted something on Facebook and was like, "I'll take it down. Just, I'm due for. I got an appointment with my,
yeah.
whatever, my doctor. Like, they come in and arrest her. Like, where are we as a country that this has become acceptable? And I know
Well, it goes.
that was not America, but to be honest, I mean, New Zealand and Australia, I'm not sure how many people are familiar with them. They are very similarly structured to the U.S., and if it can happen there, it can happen here.
Well, yeah, I mean, they're products of Western society and culture, and so even though some laws may be different, there's a similar understanding of a way of life, and also a similar way that society works, as well as an enjoyment of economic benefits. And it goes back to the worship that I said, is people have gotten so comfortable in their current way of life. They're so attached to, and nothing I say is that I've said in this stream, or I will say, comes from a standpoint of purity or non-affliction. But people get attached to their personal belongings or their quote unquote rights slash privileges, and they don't want to get fined, and so they start doing it, and they tell on others to get rewarded. We've seen multiple governors and also country leaders actively encourage people to rat on their neighbors for financial reward, and other people just go along with it because they don't want to be the ant that gets stepped on.
Well, yeah, I know. And
Yeah.
I've had, I mean, I even just had the
Yeah.
discussion yesterday with my wife about literally, it comes down to these individuals who are willing to just go out there and rat on people or do this or do that and trying to just go along. I mean, you get the people who are out there saying, just think of the grandparents. Just think of the grandparents. You know, it, these just you can keep the small businesses closed just a little bit longer to help save those grandparents. That
Uh,
small business put food on the table for 34 fucking people. And
mm-hmm,
now 12 of the people that worked for that small business are at a point where they either need to steal, they need to rob,
mm-hmm,
and I put the two as different because you steal from a business, you rob people,
mm-hmm,
um, or you go without. So
mm-hmm.
in today's society, to be honest, robbing and stealing don't seem that far outside of the norm. So
Well,
people
no,
aren't going to go
especially
without.
especially if we follow what happened in the Weimar Republic and also Venezuela, when currency and other forms of normal tender become worthless. It's,
Right.
what are you going to do? But, we haven't gotten to that point yet. Things are interesting. It's become tolerable and even allowed to proceed because, like I said before, there's no community within amongst the people who would otherwise resist. There's no
Right.
organization. There's no community. There's no organization. There's no associations. There's no support from the institutions of culture who would back them up.
Right.
I know when
And
Black
sadly,
Lives
I don't think
Matter
we're
and
going to get there.
Antifa took to the streets, they had the complete support of all the institutions of culture.
Right.
If another individual stands up and does a similar thing for the opposing viewpoint, they're crucified.
Yep. I mean,
Uh,
look at Kyle Rittenhouse. So.
Kyle Rittenhouse is a great example where something like that is going to go through the court system. That's what happens in civil society. If there's a gunfight in the street, there's going to be a court proceeding for it.
Right.
And that's just what happens in a civilized society. It doesn't just get, oh, okay, whatever. No, no, no. It's going to court. Evidence is going to get analyzed, yada yada. But the fact that they immediately tried to crucify him from the institutions of culture before any guilt or innocence had been
Yep.
determined in a court of law by a jury of his peers, he was already guilty.
Yep.
And another great example, going back a few more years, is that kid wearing the red hat who smiled smirkingly at the Native American dude beating a drum in his face.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, that kid
Interestingly
was
enough,
guilty when he was the guy who got run up on and wasn't and
interestingly
didn't do it.
enough, both kids provided support by the same lawyer.
Yep.
At least until the election stuff happened, and then Linwood decided he's going to go work for the government. So.
Yeah, but how do we survive in all this? That's the question. The fact that these things exist is superfluous. We don't choose the times. We just got to make do with them. Well, one, kind of goes back to the gentleman savage thing. Is one, get in tune with your core beliefs. Me, and for people who are like me or yourself, is get in tight with God. Christ is king. He's coming back, and this stuff will all get sorted out, because when he does return, he will be the boss, he will be the king, and he will rule with a rod of iron. And there will be a swift and sudden end to all cultism and evil in this world for a time until the final battle happens. And apart from that, build community, build strong friendships outside of Facebook, people that are within a 5 to 30-minute drive of where you live, people that you can call on to support you. And on top of the support, build associations. If you're a business owner, get in touch with your other business owners in your block or your street or your neighborhoods and build an association that actually has the resources to pool for legal fights if need be to protect yourselves.
Well, even take
And
that to
it's
the next
it's
take that
it's
to the next level too with business, because
mhm,
one thing that we've done recently locally in our community is we've created small groups of just in our industrial park area of businesses that are willing to get together, and we actually have combined our emergency response systems so
mhm,
that way, say there's an active shooter at a facility right across the street. They go on lockdown, but you go on with business as normal. Well,
mhm,
You don't know what's going on. You got guys walking between facilities, plants, this and that. You got to have those groups together so that there's good communication between you, and you know what to expect. For two reasons. Number one, you want to protect the employees who need to be protected. And number two, there very legitimately could be a person in another building who could help in the situation that you have. I mean, in our building alone, we have 3 active duty nasty girls. We have a couple former Air Force guys, 3 Army Rangers, and 2 Navy vets.
You got some people who could be.
We got some people who've been in some shit situations. So that's the makeup of our area. So the majority of those businesses put together, you've got more than 1 or 2 fire teams if you have to.
Yeah. And a partridge in a pear tree. Yes, Operator Tony. And apart from the building community and associations is also, and this is something that some people don't want to hear, but it's like, start growing families. It's like, if you want to get married, seek out that partner if God will grant them to you. And if you are married, well, and you are of a particular viewpoint, well, children are a blessing and an inheritance from the Lord, and have as many as you can and can afford to have, because guess what? One, they are your future. They will most likely carry on your beliefs and viewpoints if you raise them right. And two, you need to have a fire team of your own, and at bare minimum, a couple ammo bearers.
So, somebody who can tell the difference between red tip and black tip.
Or red mags and blue mags. That's the whole thing. So you need that, and also is like, start understanding your own culture and where you come from. I mean, Western culture is a pretty interesting and amazing one that has done a lot for humanity on the world scale. Now, it's done some messed up stuff, but that's not unique to Western culture. You can find messed up stuff in anybody else, but it is an incredibly amazing thing. And they'll say, the West has no culture. Wrong. We are a culture of conquerors, pioneers, and explorers. We're not, we have a lot to be proud of that our ancestors did, but that means we have a very bright and heavy torch that we have to carry on.
Right.
And we can't just let it die. I mean, did our ancestors do some messed up stuff? Yes, they did. But that's something that they personally will have to answer and give account for on the day of judgment, not us.
Right.
So we're not tied to their sins if they committed any.
Well,
and
yeah, 100%.
And it's amazing. Like, if you, again, for history, it's like, what, as I mentioned, empire, things that came out of Western culture. I mean, the British Empire, the Spanish Empire, the Portuguese Empire, French and German conquests. I mean, I'm talking like imperial, like Prussian Germany, the Great Russian Empire, Catalina the Great, and all the other stuff. I mean, and on top of that, the amount of technological advancement, and though originating in systems of monarchy and tyranny, if you follow the progression, it was almost like, with a few setbacks, every next progression was for more and more liberty and advancement of the human condition. You don't really see that in some other cultures.
Right.
You see a further and further regression or a stagnation.
Yeah. And in most cases, stagnation.
Yes. And there's, and I will say this for, like, everyone wants to mention China. China has a very long and prosperous culture and history, and they're responsible for a lot of technological advancement in the sciences. But if you want to look at it from a human value and liberty standpoint, no. You'll never find a culture that has fought so hard so long to remain subjects.
And they enjoy being subjects.
They seem to. They seem to be.
As somebody who has experience with Chinese employees and Chinese owners of businesses, I've never seen employees who have nothing to their name so excited to show you their boss's American car collection, which is just, to us it seems stupid. Oh, well, he's got a Ford Raptor. Well, there's a lot of people here who would like a Ford Raptor, but do you have any idea how much a Ford Raptor goes for in China?
Oh, lot.
Yeah, the guy can buy a freaking Bugatti for less than than a Ford Raptor costs. Just
Hmm.
for
Because it's American.
it's illegal to import, so you have
Hmm.
to pay. It's basically like,
You got to take some weird roundabout ways to get it in
yeah,
there, pull
yeah,
some favors.
yeah. So
Um, yeah, so it's like there's so we have a lot to be proud of in our culture, but we have a very bright and heavy torch to carry on, and also needs to be reinvigorated and relit because the fire and flame is still there, but it's fading, and that saddens me greatly because to see so many of our own fellow, what's the word I'm looking for here, our I hate to use the word, but it's the only way I come with, our fellow, comrades of Western culture as well as our own countrymen hate and despise it and try to tear it down. It's just like, what are you doing?
right. Well, I don't
uh,
necessarily think that they're necessarily our comrades in that. I think
no,
they've
no.
got this ideal in their head that, however it got there, that for some reason we aren't the best society. This isn't the best way to live. And they want to go to this socialist society, or not even that, just this free society which seems like a utopia. It really does, the
Utopia
way they,
never exists. It doesn't work.
right, the
And
way they say it, it's like it's a utopia, but it doesn't exist, and you can't have that, because no matter what, there's still going to be an opposing point of view who is
uh
going to
uh
attempt to subjugate you. And
uh
as soon as a little bit of power is given or divided, the
uh
person who has that power is going to want more power, because we are
uh
people. We want
yeah,
more power.
utopia is only one more dead body away.
Yeah, every time.
Mhm. Every time, and there's a lot of them that have been tried. And I come from a science background, and there's this thing called the scientific process, or that you go, you come up with a hypothesis and then a theory and then a way of testing that theory. And if it doesn't quite work out, you may adjust a few things, and if it still doesn't work out, well, it's probably a wrong theory and you got to rethink the relations. Well, socialism and communism have been experiments that have been repeated as nauseum with almost the same exact factors every single time, and it has the same exact outcome every single time. And it's like, yeah, this is not a good idea. And
Right.
it should be treated as a virulent, malevolent, malignant cancer anywhere it shows up, because its ultimate end result is just destruction, famine, genocide, and tyranny.
Right.
It's yeah. Um, but going taking a few steps back is understanding culture, and then so I'll maybe recap here. So strengthen your faith in your creator. Also, I missed a step. Get yourselves strong, both physically and mentally, for what's going on around you, because you need to be able to defend yourselves, your loved ones, and not just from physical threats, but also mental threats. You need to really understand where you come from on your culture. You need to and take pride in it, despite its flaws. Build your communities, both within your own household, so your family, but also your neighborhoods, and then become basically, and I don't mean this in a seditious way at all, but it's like become ungovernable. It's like mock the system every chance you get, find its flaws, poke your finger in it, speak truth to power. It's like our personal heritage as Americans is we come from people who just said nah, and they were all, a lot of them were, bootleggers, uh, bootleggers, spies, counterfeiters, and thieves, and just gunfighters, and people who just said no every chance they got to every form of authority. So we are American society is of the spawn of some of the most rebellious people that have ever walked the face of the earth, but they were rebellious to earthly powers, not to the higher powers,
Right.
because they wanted to and justly so, in a righteous fashion, live as free men. And that should be the same thing today. And So there's a long road to go. We're not at the point yet where it's unsalvageable, but we're not far off.
Right. And I think, to kind of just cap off and put it there, I think Brandon Herrera said it best when he was on, that America and the world has always been a part of a political pendulum and a
Hmm.
belief pendulum. And as it swings from one side to the other, obviously, nobody enjoys the ride. But we're at a point where it has to start swinging back the other way, or something's going to break. So
Well, it could keep swinging the other way a little bit more.
it could,
And
it
I
could,
and I will say, like you said, it's got to swing the other way, and I believe it will because we're already seeing the seeds of resistance.
yeah.
You know,
And I think it is coming back the other way. And even if we don't see the seeds of resistance, I see some of it. I don't think a lot of people, and some people may get mad at me for this. I think a lot of people who think they would stand and do something won't. I've got a
yeah,
bad habit of that these last couple of weeks, of kind of just saying, putting people down and being real. The fact of the matter is, there's a lot of fucking people out here who are screaming for the boogaloo or this or that, but at the end of the day, they haven't thought about what that actually means. And they
no,
are
and
not prepared to do what actually will happen
mhm.
should they get what they want.
Well, a couple of things is the most direct quote to that is if anyone's seen The Patriot, there's that scene where when they're in the Congress in Pennsylvania or whatnot, and Mel Gibson's character basically says, he says in so many words, I've seen combat and it was on the frontier. If you get this war that you want, your children will see of it in their own eyes in their own backyards. And it ain't
Right.
gonna be pretty. And people screaming for the boogaloo, it's like, well, okay, if you want to know what that's going to look like, start pulling up footage from Yugoslavia in the 90s, or heck, even start looking at kind of what's going on in Syria or the Ukraine right now. It's not pretty, it's not clean, it's not fun at
Right.
all.
This isn't.
And
It's not a Hawaiian shirt, flip flops, and fucking AKs type of day. I know
no,
AKs
it's
are gonna
not.
be there, but it ain't gonna be Hawaiian shirts and flip flops.
No, it's not. It's not. It'll no way in and in the cycle of history, it's inevitable. It'll happen one way or another. It happens to pretty much every society and culture that's ever existed. And we've already had it happen at least once in our culture. There was a civil war, there was the Whiskey Rebellion before that. There was, Harper's Ferry Bridge, and then there was like a whole host of our civil unrest and whatnot. But it'll happen again, and
Right.
it's not going to be pretty. It's nothing anyone should hope for. It's something that people should pray ardently for, that it never happens, and that whatever problem is at hand in our society can be healed and corrected by another means. But it very well could happen, and you need to understand it's not going to be pretty. It's not going to be fun. It's going to be the stuff of your worst nightmares.
Yep. And
Especially because the violence, because if it happens, the violence that you saw happen this last year will be
it's
child's
nothing.
play
Yeah.
by comparison. Because
Yeah.
when it does happen, all the stops will be pulled.
Right.
No one will give a flying rat's ass about government mandates, orders, laws, legal process, nothing.
It's
It'll
a free for
probably
all.
be akin to cartel violence, is
Yeah.
probably what I can.
And a lot of people tend to believe, like, oh, if this happens, it's not going to be long. It's going to be 15, 30 days and it'll be over because we're fighting a bunch of fucking idiots with dildos. I don't know what, you know, people have been paying attention to, but the fact of the matter is, yes, there are these people who are on TV who are waving around their dildos, wearing their pussy hats, having a fucking good old time. Those aren't the people who are going to be fighting the other side. They've got
Some of them,
people who are
some of
just
them will
as
be.
willing.
Some of them
Well,
will
some of
be.
them will be, but
I mean, just
I
just
think
just look at the
most.
mug shots from the Antifa arrests. I mean, come
Yeah,
on.
I
But
think what that is. I think what that is a front for the most part.
mhm, mhm,
And if you want to see what kind of opposition is out there and what kind of real opposition is out there, I come from the older 3%er community, and I've been
mhm,
paying attention to these people for a long time. these militias exist. They're not out on the internet because, just like any good militia, they have OPSEC.
Mm-hmm.
But the John Brown Gun Club, nobody's talking about them. Well, John Brown Gun Club they're not going to be on the right side of history when it comes out, because these are the people who are backing Antifa with
Mm-hmm.
guns.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah, people think it's going to be like the Civil War all over again, where you've got sides, and no, it's going to be clan on clan violence. It's going to
splinter
be sect on
cells.
sect
Yep.
violence. If it's probably I mean, I heard someone say it's not going to be uniformed rank fighting where you've got these guys in this uniform uniformly fighting these people in this uniform. It's not going to be that. It's going to be like Yugoslavia. It's going to be like cartel violence over territories. And another great example is it's probably going to be a lot like the Northern Ireland.
Mm-hmm.
And an example of that is where there's that guy who got shot up in Portland, that Trump supporter. And that was a hit. It was planned out. It was executed via ops. I mean, I saw the whole videos on it. I mean, it was all street stuff and trade craft, and it was the guy stood no chance. He was spotted, he was hunted, he was tailed, and he was capped. Done.
Yep.
So, you know.
So yeah, I mean, it's just something that, you know, I have this name, you know, that's right down here, you know, starts over here, whatever. I played on the meme. Really, is what I did with this name, and my goal with it is more not to propagate or, you know, promulgate the whole boog or the big igloo, whatever you want to say, and it's more to be a voice of reason, I guess. I don't care. I guess I'm very centrist in this whole thing, but at the same time, I have a side. I will be on the right side.
Yeah.
You know, when it comes down to
everyone has a side when the chips are down.
Right. I believe that everybody can do whatever the fuck they want, so long as it doesn't affect me, or hurt anybody else. And I guess that makes me centrist in some aspects. But I do also believe in a free society, and that's part of it. Like, I don't care. You are given your right to the rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Whatever your happiness means, so long as it doesn't interfere with anybody else's life, liberty, or their pursuit of happiness. So,
I say we do Robert Heinlein's model, Starship Troopers. Service guaranteed citizenship. Yes. 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 If you want a part of the franchise, you got to do your time. And fight the arachnid threat.
Yeah. You know what? I think it would create a lot of people who would have a little bit more respect for life.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a big
well,
thing.
Plus,
that we're
and plus, we would get co-ed showers too.
This is true. This is very true. So there's that.
Gosh. And people would get whipped in the square for doing dumbass stuff, because you know what, being stupid should hurt, and it doesn't hurt anymore to be stupid.
It should. Service guarantees citizenship. Yep. You got a chamber defense.
Would you like to know more?
So, yeah, I think, you know, that's a good point. We'll kind of just break there a little bit. We'll come back to something a little bit, you know, less deep. We all know America is going to be America, whether it's the America we want or not. So, you know.
Well, you know, war never changes. So, you know, I do foresee the Red Chinese striking first, and then we'll have to annex Canada because the Canadians aren't doing anything with it. And, you know, it'll be a great. And then, you know, what we could do as per Ron White strategy is you could buy Mexico, spruce it up, and then flip it for a profit. and have a greater American continent.
I'm gonna cut my camera for 1 second. It literally, apparently, my plug came undone. I will be right
Okay.
back here.
Well, hopefully you guys are enjoying my silliness tonight and my thoughts. Oh boy.
I'm back. We're good. All right. All of a sudden, I looked up and it said 9 minutes, and I'm like, it should be on it should be on cord power. What's going on? I got a new camera. That's why the quality looks better. We're no longer running this on the GoPro, which I love the GoPro. It's been great. It served me well. We just upgraded this week, so
yeah,
that's fun. Still playing with it, still figuring it out. Apparently, forgetting to plug it in, or at least the plug came undone.
Yeah.
So, but we didn't cut out completely, so we win.
Yeah, but chamber defense, like, service guarantee citizenship. It's like the American citizen or the average Western citizen of Western culture, whether you're in Spain, France, Germany, wherever, but especially in the American context, they really don't understand the massive amount of political power and opportunity that basically someone of the quote unquote peasant class wields. I mean, like, what we have is something that really hasn't been seen before in history for the most part. I mean, and people treat it as if it's some common thing, and it's not. And it was paid for at an extremely high price, but it's not valued at all.
Right.
And it's, oh, that's not nice, American white guy.
Yeah, no, see, I was just going to type back to him, but I'll just call it out. Yeah, I didn't get actually uglier. My ugly just got higher definition.
Jeez, man, it's being savage on yourself.
Hey, if I can't do it to myself, then I can't take it from other people. So I don't care. I'm of that guy who I nobody can say anything to me that I haven't said to myself way worse already. So.
So I just got a question because I don't really, because you said you've followed my stuff and enjoy, like, is there any particular brand of what I put out that you tend to enjoy more than others?
No, honestly, I just lately with the more godly stuff, I think it's kind of a good interjection sometimes. You don't see it at all on social media, really, from anybody, because back in the day, it was always there's two things you don't talk about: religion and politics, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, everybody talks about fucking politics now.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of nice to get a little bit of the religion in there too. So I do like seeing that. Like I said, it's not something that I go out and search for. But when I'm going through, it's kind of nice to see those quotes. And there's two people that I follow who are very heavy into sharing the word of the Lord in some form or other. One is you, and the other one goes by Saint Mises, who's and he's an artist based out of Chicago, who constantly is putting up Bible verses, stuff like that. So, I respect that. I respect the forwardness in a society who, literally, you can probably, it's probably better for you to be a Trump supporter openly than it is for you to be a religious person openly. In most cases.
Yeah, it's sad how hostile people are, or the society as a whole and the institutions of culture are, to someone who professes faith. And I will say professes faith in Christ specifically, because if someone professes faith in a Buddhist sense or a Hindu sense or an Islamic sense, no issues. No one cares.
Right.
But as soon as you profess faith in Christ, they get all up in arms, which leads me to believe that, when people start getting angry, that means you've hit a nerve that's really close to home to their own faults.
Right.
And something that they are in direct opposition against. And yeah, I would rather be on the winning team than on. I would rather be in the camp of that army than in its opposition, because throughout history, yeah, let's just say Christ is a very good winning streak.
It's fair. I wouldn't disagree. Um, and to that point too, it's I'll kind of just leave it there. Like you said it as good as it can be said. So
Mhm.
it doesn't need to be expounded upon.
No.
Chamber Defense says America needs God now. Part of the reason things have fallen off so much.
Yep. Yep.
It is. If anybody's curious, and I've heard the arguments against the whole, like, God was not a part of the religion. It wasn't really the center of everything, with America's founding fathers. Go look up the White Rose Society and look at the things that they taught, and then take that and go back and actually read the founding documents and see what actually matters. And the reason I bring up the White Rose Society is because they argued heavily against God being at the center of everything, at the same time completely saying the opposite, that it was. But go back and read the founding documents, and it's 100% right there in your face.
Yep.
There's no way around it.
Nope.
You can, and even if you don't want to read the founding documents, because they are aplenty. There's words. I mean, I think I have an audio version that I listen to every once in a while just because I think it's fun.
Well, honestly, if just on that topic, and this is just purely in regards to the literature itself, I truly believe that 18th century and mid 19th, 18th century to mid 19th century English was the most beautiful poetic form that our language has ever had, because it is in such a way that when you read it, you can understand everything that is being said. There's no Shakespearean BS in there at all.
Right.
But
everything means something.
But it is written in a form that is almost poetic, and it flows so well, and it uses such verbiage that we never, like, the English that we speak today is a highly dumbed down version of what they were using.
Right.
And when you read it,
especially
it's like
the English that we write today.
Oh gosh, yeah. I mean, when you read that stuff, it's like, even when you're reading a quote unquote legal document, you're going, "This is poetry." I mean, it's incredible, and my, how far we have fallen from a literary and language structure standpoint.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this it's one of the reasons why the documents have held up over the years, and people argue, the validity of them, but the fact of the matter is the people who do that don't have a full understanding of exactly what they're reading, and the structure that it was set up with, and the way it is. The punctuation that they used, just even in the Second Amendment, the punctuation is purposeful.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just an arbitrary It's not comma. Just done to break it up, because that's how Americans do it now. Especially, like, we put a period to break it up.
Mm-hmm.
We legitimately used to write in a manner that semicolon or it all mattered. It all meant something different.
Yeah, it was very important, because how you did that could change the entire meaning, and did change the entire meaning of what you were trying to present.
Right.
And that's why I absolutely get irate when I hear these modern interpretations of what our Constitution and the Bill of Rights is meaning when they say it. It's just like, are you stupid? I mean, well, one, they're doing. I'm like, one, you're interpreting something almost 300 years outside of the context of when it was written. You're looking at it from a completely different understanding, literary and linguistic understanding, and you're not taking into account terminology that was used, how it was used at the time. And like okay, we'll just use the Second Amendment because everyone here is probably familiar with it. It says a well-regulated militia being necessary for the security. Okay, you have someone read that, God forbid a Democrat, and they mean, oh, well, that means it needs to be heavily controlled, scrutinized, and oh gosh, and litigiously regulated by the government. No, that's not what it meant. It meant a very well disciplined and well structured.
Right.
It meant something. It meant a well regulated militia was their way of saying that these people got their shit together, and they are a force to be reckoned with.
Right.
These weren't people who were just, with a knapsack and a rifle. These were people who were fully decked out and equipped to wage war.
Right. At the time, the arms that they had, the arms that they bear, were the same as any military standing against them.
Oh yeah. If you looked at a fully equipped American militiaman of the time, there was no difference in equipment between what he had and a redcoat or a French Imperial or a Spanish Imperial soldier had.
Yeah. Literally the only difference between the militia and the Quakers, the soldiers who were fighting, the garb that they were wearing, the clothes on their back.
Mm-hmm. And possibly some training, but a lot of these guys were also veterans of the French Indian Wars, and they were not to be trifled with. And people forget this. Is like, oh, Second Amendment means this. No, if you look at the context, the first artillery pieces that the Continental Army possessed were leased from private citizens.
Right.
You had private citizens who owned artillery. That'd be like a private citizen today owning a 155 millimeter howitzer battery. And the first ships of the Continental Navy were leased warships from private individuals. There were private individuals or private companies, probably, who literally owned fully manned and equipped and supplied frigates.
Right. And that's the way it had to be, though.
Yeah.
These people, like the founding documents and like, they were put together to protect the rights we already had.
Yeah. I mean, and it's like, well, people talk about, and the Constitution is so shattered and splattered and shotgun today. It's like, does it even matter anymore? Because no one follows everyone just does whatever the hell they want to do, like hence the lockdowns. But it's like, yeah, if 2A was literally applied in the same context, there would be literal, and I'm not talking about through legal exception or legal loophole. There would just be people and groups of people who had private air forces, like, fully decked out and equipped F-15s and F-16s, guys who owned fully equipped and supplied destroyers and aircraft carriers, tank battalions, Apache gunships, artillery pieces, all of it. There'd be no difference.
In most cases, when that was written, the people were better armed than the government because the people could afford it. The government couldn't.
Yeah.
How have we changed that around?
Taxes.
We as the people
lots of taxes.
we the people have given in. I mean, think about it. We put all that tea in the harbor for a 3% tax hike.
We did. And now we're...
How much did your insurance go up last year?
Yeah, well, if you look at it, people are spending about 30% of their income in taxes.
Right.
There's a great meme a while back which shows the founding fathers, and they said we would have been stacking bodies by now. And you know what? That's historically probably accurate. They'd be turning in their graves if they could be seeing what the citizens are allowing themselves to be subjected to. And again, this is not a call for seditious acts or anything. This is just a statement of comparative history.
Yeah, we're not saying go out and do anything. It's just a matter of, like, look around. Like, we're sitting here talking about this because history has shown us what needs to happen. We gave all this power to them, and don't believe all these people. Things are going to go back to normal in June. The fuck
no, they're not.
Are. You gave them the power. You gave them the fucking power to say this is okay.
Well, everyone can be forgiven for the first lockdowns because we didn't know what was going to, everyone thought this was probably going to be like the next Black Death. So it's just like, okay, well, let's just stay inside for a couple of weeks. Let's just let this blow over and see what happens. Well, no. And now they're doing it. It's like, yeah, well, and this is why people say, people laugh at gun people for like why they stand up so hard for what they believe in, because like, look what they did to us. It was 15 days to flatten the curve. And now they stole your jobs, stole your businesses, stole your income, stole your families, and then they stole your face.
Right.
All inside of a year.
Yep.
It's
Yeah,
like,
I don't remember who said it earlier, but it was something I think we've said before on the stream that a year ago they'd have called the cops on you for putting a mask on before you made it into a store.
yeah,
Today they're calling the cops on you if you don't put a mask on before you walk in the store.
which shows how sheep-like most people are.
Right.
And again, it comes into OPSEC. It's like, do what you have to do so that you can live as free as you can. And if that means maybe, doing a little OPSEC and urban camouflage so you can get into a store to get the stuff you need, but then, defy. Take the
Right.
mask off when you're going down the aisle. If you're getting close to somebody, like, maybe put it back on if you don't feel comfortable or whatnot. If not, well, just keep going about your business. See who stops you or says something.
Right.
It's like, do what you got to do to live free. Just be in defiance as much as you can, and try to regain your freedoms and your lives back.
So what are your opinions on the vaccine?
On the what?
On the vaccine?
Oh, the vaccine. Well, life has taught me in anything in life, whether it's a car, a video game, a new rifle or whatnot, is never get the first generation of anything, because there's going to be problems. And I do have a science and medical background, and I'm not enthused by how fast this thing is being brought to market. And I also don't trust the people who are developing it or who are putting a lot of stake in it and funding it. No, thank you. And especially when it's something that, from the medical perspective, and I have.
All right, laughter. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, it's like no. It's like, this is something that is so similar to the flu that it's almost indistinguishable, except for loss of smell and taste.
But not in
And
everybody.
not everybody, but not everybody. A lot of people die from the flu too, and the flu has a vaccine, and still people, the flu still kills 45 to 60,000 people a year.
I look at it this way too. Like, I honestly, I haven't gotten a flu vaccine or flu shot ever.
No. And I want to be clear here. I'm not arguing against vaccines. I'm not.
Right.
Vaccines do work, especially when they're properly vetted. They've gone through the process. That's why we don't deal with polio in the West anymore.
Right. Yeah.
That's why we don't deal with a lot of stuff. It's because it's been wiped out. But there's things like, the common cold. We don't have a vaccine for that. We have the flu. The vaccine kind of works if they figure out the right strain.
Right.
COVID, there's too much other bullshit going on with COVID for me to consider taking a vaccine for it. And
to me, the whole COVID vaccine thing isn't necessary. Like, we're gonna get to a point, and I don't, and this is just from my understanding of medicinal and vaccines, what they do. So vaccines promote a antibody response within the body.
Supposed to, yeah.
For them to
it's
work.
It's basically so that your body can recognize something that is harmful to you, but it's presented in such a state that it's either not active or it's just the target marker so that it can fight it.
Right.
And then it's like, okay, we've had target practice. We've done a few dry runs. We know what this is. So when it shows up, the body can just kill it on sight.
Right.
So that works. That's true. It's why we don't have polio anymore, or smallpox, or things like this that we don't deal with anymore. But until proven otherwise, I have a massive suspicion that the COVID vaccine is going to be used in such a fashion to push other agendas. Like, I'm already seeing things popping up about, hell, even like New Zealand was proposing like setting up camps for people who don't get the vaccine.
How about Ticketmaster?
I'm seeing proposals being put up that you don't get your stimulus check unless you get a vaccine. Most likely, like, you won't be able to fly in airlines or go to movie theaters or concerts unless you have papers saying you've gotten a COVID vaccine. So they're going to use it for other nefarious purposes of control.
Right.
And so that's why I'm not.
You need your papers to travel.
Yeah.
That's where we're headed if this becomes mandated and they want to push it.
Yep. And who's to say that they're not going to slip something inside of that vaccine that then, when we transition to, say, a possible cashless society, and now you got the Bill Gates Microsoft chip, and oh, look, you said something offensive to minority X, Y, or Z.
Yep.
Now we're
Zach.
going to turn off all your finances for a month. You know?
Yep. Nope. I had that conversation with the wife at the dinner table tonight about it.
Yep.
Like, it's and they've already started going cashless with this virus. They've used the virus for that too.
Yeah. There's
they've artificially created a coin shortage,
Mhm.
and then on top of that, they've made it, in certain areas and certain places where they won't even accept cash because they don't want to do the hand-to-hand transfer.
I know.
You're touching my fucking credit card. How's that any goddamn different?
Yeah, you're touching my credit card. The funniest thing I ever saw. This is recently. I'll go with the family and we'll go to the tennis court or the pickleball court and we'll play. It's good times. There's a team next to us. They got masks on. You're outside, okay? You're outside the tennis court or pickleball court.
Right.
They've all got masks on. They've all got gloves on while they're playing and swinging their mitts. Well, one of their balls gets knocked over and goes into our court, okay? I go to pick up the ball and bring it to them. And they're like, no, don't touch it with your hands. It's like, you realize what this ball has been rolling on. It's called the floor in an outside sports court that's got dirt and grit and other bacteria and debris and other viruses. And that people are stepping on as well and hopping all over. It's like, what is on my hands is not going to make a hill of beans of difference what's on that ball.
Exactly. Yeah. Unfortunately, I think people have been... So much fear has been injected into people over this virus. And here's the thing about the vaccine, too. I honestly think even if the vaccine comes out, maybe it will be safe. There's a good chance in my eyes, the way this is being pushed, that the vaccine is going to probably be 60 to 70% placebo.
Oh, yeah. Well,
Just because
heck,
the fact
you know it is with Clinton, Obama, and Bush getting it on TV to prove that it's safe.
They need to quell the fear that they created. It's to the point where there's no way they can just say, okay, everybody, it's safe to go outside. Because they've injected this fear into so many people, and they've created a society that legitimately cannot go back to work because they're too afraid.
No, they won't go back to work because they fine the hell out of them if they do.
Or they stimulate they give them $600 a week to stay unemployed.
Yeah, that guys like you and me pay for through our taxes because we're still working.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, it's true. Chamber defense, like I did, like you said, man. I come from an EMS background as well. I'm actually I have a paramedic background. Yeah, PPE, like you use gloves. They're single-use, single-contact items. You use them on the patient that you're on, and then when you're done, you trip them off and toss them, and get the next set.
I'm completely baffled being a person who's similarly, paramedic, EMT. How the fuck can they wear them all day?
I don't know.
I can barely get through, stopping the bleed before I got to change the gloves because one broke through.
Yeah, one broke through, or you can't get them off fast enough because your hands are in a sweat sauna, and you take them like I'm sure you've worked a code, wearing you worked a code, and when you're finally done and you've done the patient transfer in the OR and you get out of there, you've done your cleanup, you take them off, your hands are freaking white and wrinkled, and you can see every freaking callus in your hand. It's like
I've legitimately had it where, like, I pulled it off and like my shirt got wet. It looked like I spilled a cup on me.
Oh yeah, like you'll just be this spray of like sweat going everywhere. Yeah, it's gross, disgusting. And then you're just like, there was one hospital that we go to a lot that they actually installed in the ER for guys like us, a big giant like fan, like hand dryer, so you could go in there like in just like industrial, like it'd go up to your elbows and you could just dry your arms and your hands out from like all the sweat that you'd build up after like working a code or something.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't get people today.
Yeah, and also similar background. We both know how silly wearing masks is all day.
Right.
And it's like, no, I know what the filtration rate is on these masks, and it ain't gonna stop something that small. Sorry.
I deal with micron filtration at work, and this is not a micron
No, the
filter.
mask is to stop someone's sputtle or blood spray from getting on you. It's not,
Right.
or their vomit. It's not for something that's like half a micron.
Well, and then it's like we work in cubicles in the engineering department, which is standard like everywhere. But you got to be more than 6 feet away from somebody, right? This is the thing.
Your cubicle, you're already self-contained.
But our cubicle wall all of a sudden makes it okay. It's like,
I know.
literally, dude is sitting 2 feet away from me on the other side of this beautiful foam wall. And when we stand up, we're literally face to face with each other 2 feet away.
Yeah, it's all stupid. Everyone's making up the rules as they go. There's no real science behind any of it, and it's just this is what happens when you've got a compliant population that is fearful, headed by people who are little Pol Pot dictators who figure out that they can say whatever they want to say, and everyone will fall in line.
Right.
And that's the point that we're at.
Yep, and it's sad to see America at this point.
And it's also, I would say, the result of the over industrialization and urbanization of our lives. If most people were agrarian, they wouldn't give two shits about what some governor said.
Right.
It's like, I'm just going to go back to tilling my field. I don't care.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, pretty much.
Oh, well.
You know, and that, you know, I don't even know where to go from there, because that's a lot of truth.
Yeah.
You know,
well, war never changes.
Right back at it. That's perfect. So, you know, this has been fun. I don't want to keep you too much longer. I kind of told you we'd be about an hour, and here we are, you know, hour and
Dude,
40 minutes into
it. You got me on, and you know the crew I hang out with. We go a long time.
Yeah, I know. Tufu is one of those that's good at going for a long, long time.
Oh, he'll just go and go and go, and it's you know it's a
our
great time.
post-election shit show went for like 5 hours. Compliments of Tufu.
Yes, that sounds about right.
Yeah, but you know what? I appreciate this conversation. I think everybody here has kind of gotten something from it. It's definitely been fun, and I'll let you get back to your family and doing what you got to do.
Sure, man. I appreciate the invite.
Is there anything you want to shout out? Anybody? Anything you want to shout out? I see you got the HAH patch on.
Yes. So this goes back to culture as well, and also like being history is if you want probably one of the best pages for kind of Western culture and history and military, especially military history. We're talking like peak of Cold War stuff and before and immediately post after. Find a High Adventure History on Instagram. You will have to request a follow. He does vet the people that he allows to follow him pretty heavily. He doesn't do anything controversial at all, but he just doesn't want someone to zuck him, as we're all afraid of these days. Awesome page. He does a lot of polls for like patches and swag, and he's tied in with a lot of other cool people in Instagram, like non-compliant clothing, roadies, plaid, Delta Magna. There's a lot of awesome people who are trying to relight the fire of, I hate to say it now, like old school Western culture and bring it to life. And they're really good people. It's a really good time. But yeah, that's kind of what this is right here. And all I can other say is like everyone just understand that, these are going to be really interesting times that we're in, no matter what way they go. Be savage, be independent in as many ways as you can. And if you're not independent in anything, start learning how to be. Be true to your beliefs and your faith. Keep the faith, especially, and be true and strong with your families and build your communities, because that's the only way that it's going to improve. You got to have an inheritance and something to pass on and people to pass it on to. And if you don't do that, we're just going to wither and die.
Yeah, that's about it, man.
Mm-hmm.
So, With that, I do appreciate your time. I appreciate you coming on.
That was my pleasure. I'm not used to being invited to things like this, much less driving the conversation. So this was kind of fun for me.
And that's kind of the thing. I just reach out to random people that are, I think have a decent sense
Mhm.
of self,
Yeah.
and try to do this. So,
Well,
um,
hopefully this is kind of what you were looking for and what your viewers were looking for. I just kind of
I
shot
think
from the
I
hip.
think after the last 2 weeks where we've dealt with rescheduling of guests and stuff like that and of others, it was a welcome change of pace
Yeah.
to have somebody other than me on the stream again. So,
Well, I
um,
do appreciate the invite. I will admit. I will admit when you first contacted me, I was like, "Who is this? How do they know me? Why are they?" So I had to. But once I started seeing who you'd had on and reached out and got the positive feedback, I was like, "Okay, let's do it. Let's have some fun."
yeah, yeah. I mean, we're not big, and that's good for us because we just dive into whatever and don't care. So,
Well, you know what? It allows us to have the purest form of discussion, and it doesn't have to be the big groups that make the biggest change.
exactly, and you know what? It's fun too because it's kind of lets people go off brand if they want to, and that's part of some
Mm.
of the other individuals. I think when Brandon Herrera was on,
Oh gosh.
at one point he literally said he's like, I had no idea that I was going to come on here and we were going to be talking about finances or my legal degree.
Well, did you at least talk about his hair at least one time?
Well, of course, I think we actually called it Hair Era, the show.
Well, uh,
Tufu's
I was gonna
obsessed
bring
with
up
his hair,
something
so
about uh, oh gosh, it like is the AK-50 vaporware still, or is it
he did bring
uh,
it back in a recent video, Gen 1 anyway.
mm-hmm. And I say that in jest. Brandon's a good friend.
Yeah.
Anything I say about Brandon is not in any way to slight him at all. He's a good dude. He's been more than fair to me and my friends. He's got unrevocable crash privileges on our projects. And but when you're good friends with someone, what do? You sling them a little bit of guff every once in a while.
Exactly. So, um, with that said, I'll just give my little spiel here. Like I said, we do this every week just to have fun and have fun conversations. Next week, for those who are still watching, I'll give you a little heads up. We're gonna have stilettos and shotguns on next week. You're
Nice.
familiar with Carrie, so she's gonna come on. We're gonna have interesting conversation there. So that'll be hitting the blog Monday morning. A little bit of update on that. Guess coming the week after that, and then there's Christmas. So we're probably gonna take a break on that. Let everybody have family because it's Friday.
Mm-hmm.
It is our day, but it's Christmas, so that's family day. So we're not gonna do anything that day. So on the store, we have 25% off through December 10th, I think. I think December 8th is the final day that I can guarantee that I can get everything to you before the Christmas holiday. But December 10th, we're doing 25% off till then. So hurry in there. We do have some people have saw it today. We actually pulled it off because we got some Slavic influence who reached out to us and said, you know what, you did it wrong. So tomorrow morning, probably 10 o'clock time frame, we will be dropping the Fuck Antifa in Cyrillic, and it has been vetted by our Slavic buddy who told me I screwed it up the first time. So this is exactly as it should be. We will be releasing that again, like I said, tomorrow, probably right around 10 o'clock in the morning. So there's only a couple of those have been ordered. Everybody who ordered one already in the old version, y'all have been emailed and notified, and y'all okayed getting the actual corrected one. And it wasn't that it was wrong, it was just that it was weak. So basically, in Cyrillic, there's two different versions of the word fuck. One that's basically very soft, and one that actually means get fucked, basically. So we're correct now.
It's all about the inflection, right?
Exactly. So we've been vetted, we've been corrected, and that actually came to us actually by our good friend Tuck. So
Tuck's a good dude.
yeah, he reached out. He's like, "Hey, I put this to my Slavic buddy, and you fucked it up." I appreciate it, but he ordered one, so I'm willing to change it. I'd have changed it for anybody who'd have reached out and said something. So, for that, I appreciate it, Tuck. If you watch this, thank you. Hi, Cap, again. Thanks for your time. I appreciate
My
it.
pleasure.
If anybody doesn't know who he is, go to his Instagram. Check him out at HicapClipazine. It is right underneath him here over on Instagram. I believe I also have a link to it on our blog at openmic.boogbrand.com. Under his blog, there's a link to your Instagram directly. So, appreciate it. Thanks everybody for stopping by, and Wiedersehen, good evening, good night, stay safe, have a good weekend, and for God's sakes, don't shoot yourself in the dick.
Don't do that, no.